One other sign of the government preparing for a potentially difficult COVID winter is in the city of brotherly love. The school district of Philadelphia announced students and teachers they're going to have to wear masks when they return from winter break. The district said due to potential exposure to COVID-19 and other respiratory viruses that are going around, face masks will be required from January 3rd through the 13th, hopefully to curb some of those infections.
Indeed. Well, Dr. Amesh Adalja, a senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security and also an adjunct assistant professor at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He is joining us now live to discuss the moves by the White House right now and what they mean for all of us as we head into another, as Alex just said, a COVID winter. Doctor, always good to see you. Thank you so much for getting up early with us on a Friday morning. COVID cases again are rising. The White House trying to beat back. We heard about changes to the booster shot, free testing once again available, and Dr. Fauci perhaps on his way out the door feeling a little freer to kind of say what he wants. Had this to say about where we are as a country.
In fact, we are going to see an uptick in cases as we get deeper into the colder months of the winter when we approach the end of the year holiday season. People congregate indoors. There's going to be an uptick in infections, and with that, an uptick in hospitalizations and even death.
All right, it's kind of a familiar, sadly familiar winter prediction there. Do you agree with that? And what are we in for over the next 3 months or so?
I do agree that when people socially interact with each other over the holidays, there's going to be transmission of COVID. That's not something that's really avoidable in the sense that we've got a lot of virus out there, and we know that social interaction spreads infection. The key is trying to keep those cases from turning into hospitalizations and deaths. And as you heard before, we have so many more tools now in 2022 than we ever did during other eras of this pandemic. We have home tests, we have vaccines, we have boosters, we have drugs like Paxlovid that reduce hospitalization risk by a significant amount. So all of this is not something that has to turn into people in the hospital. I think the cases are going to be inevitable, but it's about using the tools that we have to minimize the impact that COVID-19 has during this winter season. And I think this is doable. It's just that too many tools have been left on the shelf.
And I talked about this a little bit during Early Rush, which is a show that starts at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we kind of talked about how, the people that are eligible for this second round of booster shots have simply just not gotten the shots. And Dr. Fauci did respond to that and said that it was disappointing, to know that those are the numbers. So when you think about that, when you think about all the tools that you said that we are leaving on the shelf, how worried should we be? Because I know last Christmas, when I gathered with my family, that's when I got COVID.
Right.
And so that was, really alarming to me. And I was boosted. Most of my family was boosted in that case. But when we're leaving these tools on the shelf, how, I guess, vigilant should we be? I mean, are people just simply saying, okay, whatever happens, happens, and I'll deal with it after the fact? Do you think all these tools are more of a hindrance to this?
No, I don't think the tools are a hindrance. I think that's what allows people to be able to navigate a world in which COVID-19 risk is always going to be present. I think the tools make this something that makes the virus much more manageable. And what we really have to do is use those tools strategically, and that means protecting vulnerable people. So if you look at the 300 to 400 deaths that are occurring every day, many of them, almost all of them actually, are in the elderly. And those are individuals who may never have gotten the updated boosters, may never have been given Paxlovid. So that's really what we want to do. We're always going to have COVID-19 cases, ups and downs, and seasonality. The key is to make it a less deadly infection, and it is a less deadly infection for almost everybody except for the most vulnerable, who have to continually be vigilant about their vaccine status, about whether they need Paxlovid, and that's going to be the true going forward. And I think that's what the aim has to be, and that's what the nursing home part of this winter plan is, why that's really important, because nursing home patients are the most vulnerable, and those are the individuals that need to be boosted to the highest degree, that have to have Paxlovid, they have to be able to be easily vaccinated, and that's, I think, to me, the most significant part of the White House plan.
Got it.
And with that understood, I feel like in the last 6 to 7 weeks, I've known more people who have gotten it now than for a while. So I have a practical question. If you've had a recent bout of COVID, gotten through it, gotten over it, did what you had to do, how quickly then do you need a booster shot? Does having an infection change the timeline for vaccination?
When you've been acutely infected and you're recovering, you do have a lot of immunity to reinfection, and that immunity may interfere with the ability of the booster to give you any protection. So you should be waiting at least 3 months, and in some places even 6 months before you get that booster, because it won't actually work very well if you've got so much circulating antibody from your recent infection.
Okay.
Got it. So for months, the Biden administration, we know, have been asking for more funding to continue this fight against COVID. But the current Congress, they failed to come to an agreement, as we know. Now, a new Congress is starting in just a few weeks. Republicans are going to have the majority in the House. Is it even possible to come to an agreement on funding at that point? Is that something that we can even look to as kind of a reprieve, I guess, in that way?
It's difficult to know what will happen in Washington, because when you think about the way Congress funds infectious disease emergencies and public health, it's very reactive and not proactive. And it's always been subject to these types of partisan political fights. And I think that is what leaves us in the situation that we're in. Hopefully, politicians now recognize that infectious disease preparedness is really important, and hopefully the general public realizes that and starts to demand action from their elected leaders. Because until Congress is actually penalized for not taking action, penalized for what happened during the pandemic and with our public health agencies, they're not going to be responsive to it. And I think what we need is a proactive approach that treats public health emergencies almost the way we treat other national security emergencies, like the Department of Defense, where they're out of this boom and bust, panic and neglect cycle where nothing ever gets done, and we end up in a position where we can't respond to COVID or monkeypox or flu or RSV because we just don't have the resources. And this isn't something new. This has been going on for decades.
Okay.
There's also, as there always has been, quite frankly, an issue of messaging, because every public health official that comes on to us, including you, talks about the importance of vaccination, get the shots, get the shot, get the shot. But then, you know, they take away the military mandate. So, you know, if it's okay for the men and women in uniform, they don't not required. Why are you telling me I have to do it? There's always a lot of mixed messaging, and we all know it gets political in some way. Beyond the ups and downs of this thing, Doctor, this has always been a question I ask, and I just think it's realistic. We're 3 years into this almost, and people have made their decision, whether they're on team vaccine or team no vaccine. And they're going to gather for the holidays, New Year's, they're going to get with family, they're going to party, they're going to drink, they're going to travel. We're going to do all of those things. America is kind of over it. And I've been in enough airports and restaurants and wherever, and the masks are gone. I get weird looks because I still have mine on. The whole thing has changed. So practically, what's it mean if rates stay where they are now, which likely they will? What does that mean long term? What's that mean long term in terms of how America deals with this virus? What does it mean? What does life look like at the current rate we're at right now, which probably is not going to move much?
Well, to me, I'm less focused on the number of cases, because this is a virus that's always going to be with us. It's actually the deaths and the severe cases that require hospitalization that are the issue. Because what we're trying to do is make this a manageable infection. So yes, cases are going to go up, but if cases can be decoupled from hospitalizations and deaths, then I think we're winning. And largely they have been decoupled from cases, but we still have 300 to 400 deaths, most of whom are not using those tools. So I think that what we want to do is just get better at prescribing Paxlovid and making sure high-risk people, particularly high-risk people, are boosted. And I think there's some people in that group that may not know about Paxlovid, or their doctors are reticent to prescribe it, or have not been able to get access to the bivalent booster because they reside in a nursing home and it's difficult for them to get that booster. That's where I think we have the ability to improve outcomes. We're always going to have cases, and most people have acclimatized to COVID-19, including myself, and I think that's a good thing. But there's still work to be done to use all these tools and to wait for newer tools that may make COVID even more manageable. I think that's the issue, is turning this into a respiratory virus that all of us deal with year in and year out, and don't really have to worry about high levels in the hospital at any given time. And remember, hospitals are also dealing with influenza and RSV, and that capacity concern on top of staffing concerns in hospitals is difficult. And I think that's the main concern here, not so much the cases.
Yep, that's true. Triple-demic is what they're calling. Yeah, very, very dangerous. All right, Dr. Amish Adalja, always good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks.